Alright guys, so today what we're doing is we're making soup for our dogs. So a lot of times we use this for supplemental feeding, or like times like now, hey, it's real hard and cold. You know, we've had that big Arctic blast. We've had a lot of temps low in the teens, low in the single digits. And so one thing that we do to help keep our dogs up is make soup. And you know, we've done this out of pig, deer, coon, beaver. And I want to preface with what we're doing. This isn't like veterinary recommended. This isn't any of those things. So do all these things and take care of your dogs at your own risk. This is just what we do and how we do it. We haven't had any complications, and that doesn't mean you won't. So the first thing first, get a pig, get a coon, get a deer, whatever. Roadkill, hunt it, get it given to you, whatever. Second step, skin and clean it. So you get that done? Alright, so got the pig skinned now. So what comes next? We're going to quarter up and debone this, and then I'll show you that while I'm grinding. So, as you can tell, now the pig is been deboned and cut up and chunked up, and you know, cut it into strips or chunks about like this size here. And so that just helps it grind easier. So the reason I started grinding, because I used to just keep it chunked up, is I found that I can evenly distribute the meat better, and that it cooks a lot faster as well. So if you have like a big like 10-gallon pot or something like that, and you were cooking it all down in, you know, I've noticed like half the time in cook time versus like cooking something like this to make sure it's well done, you get that same grease rendering. So now what we're gonna do is just grind this. I think I have like a 1/8 inch coarse plate on here, you know, just enough to grind it. So here's what our finished product's going to look like. So as you can tell, it's all ground and a lot of oil, a lot of grease. You see most of that dripping off there is grease. And so typically what I do is I'm going to pull this off and I'm going to put it in a 5-gallon bucket and just let it start cooling. And then I usually mix in like 8 to 12 cups of water, really depending just how thick this stew is here. So I'm mixing like 8 to 12 cups of water in with the bucket. Just make sure it's just diluted enough and it's not just grease to be too hard on their stomach. Alright, so that kind of wraps up all the dog soup stuff. You know, like I showed y'all the whole process. You know, first you get your animal, then you got to skin it. And then I quartered and chopped it up, deboned it, and then I ground it up, and then I put it in that big stock pot over fire. You know, with a good hot fire, it probably takes a couple hours usually. I get that done. I get all my meat processing done. Try and have it like all done a day before. So each day I'm preparing for the next. If you have the animals, is the best way to do it. Sometimes you gotta do it all one day, you know. But typically, you know, do all the meat work in the morning, put it on, go do something else throughout the day. And just let the soup cook. Make sure it's all stirred up before, otherwise you'll get like big clumps, and if the meat was cold it might not cook all the way through, which isn't a concern if you have venison. But if you're feeding something like pork or coon or something like that, like I just always make sure it's cooked all the way through. That way if there's any kind of parasite or anything, it's done. And I like to have mine at a rolling boil. Make sure I can get all that fat, everything accessible as possible. And that's another big thing on cooking meat. The vitamins and the minerals are much easier to digest and extract out of that. Another thing that I've noticed with the soup or just the raw feeding in general is a lot less kennel cleanup. You know, if I'm feeding kibble, just full-time kibble, you know, they're probably going to give you anywhere from go from 1 to 2 times a day. And you know, with this, I'm probably like 3 times a week maybe. You know, it's just because a lot of it's just moisture, and right now, like I said, everything's frozen here. Like we don't typically have this harsh of a weather at all. So like all their water buckets stay frozen. So this is the majority of all their food and their water, and it's just enough moisture content in it where I don't have to just worry too much about water, and I'm still keeping weight up on them and they don't seem overly thirsty. They're not out there just eating nice trying to get water, so I know they're not super concerned about it. But as far as any other additives, so this is called Wind River Balancer, and so we actually got this at Rusty Mayshore's last hog band. It was one of the prizes there for the woods class, and so kind of what we use there is like a gut stabilizer. You know, if you have a dog that always seems puny or something like that, and his stomach always seems to be upset. If you hear puppies growling and playing in the background, because they're running around in the shed with me right now. But so I've seen good results of that. You know, I haven't had the chance to use it too much. I only had it since September. So, and then another one that I use to add in is the Comega Supreme. You know, that's just, it's easier to add that as a general multivitamin instead of doing something like just like one pill capsule. So, you know, you can add that before or after, so once you have it all in the bucket, you can just measure it out and be like, okay, if I keep it stirred up continuously, each dog's going to get this. Typically, if I have a dog that needs vitamins, I'm just going to give it to them individually, but I have seen good results. You know, if it's just a cold day or something like that, like in this instance, like if I notice several of the dogs just weren't feeling well, you know, I give them some pep in their step. I know a lot of people use red cell, but I mean, the main thing you're getting out of that is iron. And you know, a dog can have too much iron, and a lot of this stuff, especially like if you're using the horse stuff, it's made for horses. So the iron content is much higher than if it was like red cell for dogs. And so, you know, I don't generally use that if I'm feeding like raw meat, because most of those meats have plenty of iron in them. Now if I'm feeding just kibble only, you know, and hey, a dog seems a little anemic, I think he might be getting worms, you know, give him just a small amount, and it seems to help him back up. Like I said, typically the only time I give a dog red cell is anemia. So like, oh, they had a bad flea infestation, or if they got a lot of worms, or man, they got injured and lost a lot of blood, something like that. Just something to pep that side up, because you have to have that iron for your red blood cells. And so, you know, other than that, I typically don't use it. It's probably the least used. You know, we have one of those big 1 gallon jugs, and then we don't use it, but every 2 years I think we have to replace it roughly. Hell, maybe longer. But outside of that, you know, a lot of times just the soup by itself, from what I can figure out, you know, with no additives, I think it was like 400 to 500 calories like per measuring cup of that soup. Basically it all getting cooked out and rendered down. And you know, most dogs I'm feeding between 2 and 6 cups of the soup. You know, 2 cups is going to be for like our 20-pound dogs, and 6 cups is going to be like for we have a blue tick that's like 100 pounds. And you know, and they hold weight good at those feeding intervals, and that's what works for us. Like I said, everybody's dogs are going to be a little different, you know, and that's why this works so well for us, is because it's a system made to us. You know, this might not work at all for you, but if you only had 5 or 10 dogs and you had a meat grinder and you had the time and the energy and the effort, you could make enough dog food to last a while. I mean, right now it's like we could take I think like 120-pound pig, 130-pound pig like I cleaned this morning, and completely deboned it and stripped it. And you know, you could probably go more expensive, you get more meat off the head and stuff like that. I just try to get what I can off of it. Buzzards gotta eat too. And so, you know, that'll feed our 40 dogs for 1 day. So, you know, to me that's about reasonable. I mean, it's a lot of dogs. So if you had 10 dogs, you know, it could feed you for 4 days. So if you cleaned a couple pigs and you only had 10 dogs and you went through and ground it, you know, you could potentially get like your week's worth of feeding. And so, you know, hope y'all enjoyed today's video. Hope it was informational. Like I said, it's not science, it's nothing like that. I mean, some of it is, but we're not vets, we're not doctors in this, nothing like that. Like I said, this is strictly what we do, how we do it. Like I said, not telling y'all to do it. We just had a lot of questions on it, so we thought we'd share it. So hope y'all enjoyed this one. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe.